Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 30 Days of Netflix. Today I am going to fill a hole in my film education by watching a really old movie. So old it's silent. I'm going to watch Nosferatu. I think it's German, and it's from 1920 something. Netflix says 1929, but I may have to look that up later. It seems to me Nosferatu was earlier, that was really earlier, early 20s. But I don't know. I'm not a film scholar. I just like movies. Silent film. If I'm remembering correctly, it's actually an unofficial adaptation of Dracula. The guy's name is Count Orloff. Olaf? No, that's the snowman from Frozen. Orloff? Does it say? Orlok. I get whatever. They changed the name. Instead of vampire, it's Nosferatu, and instead of Dracula, it's Count Orlok. I think they got sued over it too. Let me explain to you all my wrong memories of the history of this film. I'm sure you'll find that interesting. I haven't seen a lot of silent films. I've seen I've seen silent film or silent movie by Mel Brooks. I saw Voyage to the Moon, Trip to the Moon, La Voyage das Las Luna, something. I don't speak French. I'm terrible at French. That's my worst language. It's a French film from like really early in the century, like 1900 something, like 1901, 1902, 3, somewhere around there. Really short too. I think Nosferatu's feature length. Let's see. Yeah, it's an hour and a half. That one's like 10 minutes. It'd be interesting to see if they actually have a film score on this too, or if it's just pure silent. Vampire movie. Yeah. One interesting thing. I typically don't like vampire movies. I love monster movies. I love horror and gore and all that stuff. But vampires, I don't typically like. I find them boring villains. Certainly not sexy. I've never understood why vampires are sexy. Maybe I'm a prude, and that's why, or just weird. I don't know. It's like they, bite your neck and they suck the blood out, and some people are like, oh, it's so hot. I'm like, no, it's not. It's horrible. I do like vampire hunter movies. Even something really cheesy like John Carpenter's Vampires with James Woods. If the vampire is a true villain and someone's going out to kill the vampire, I like movies like that, but movies that focus on the vampire as the character, like most adaptations of Dracula or Interview with the Vampire, or probably Twilight, haven't seen it. They really just don't do it for me. So, be interesting to see how I react to this movie. So, let's see. I was thinking. The song Love is an Open Door from Disney's Frozen really needs a bridge. It's a great song. I think it's, with one exception, well written. It's got some great harmonies in it. The interplay between the two parts is great. But it needs a bridge. It's too short. It's verse 1, chorus 1, verse 2, chorus 2, and that's it. Needs a bridge. Anyway, Nosferatu. It's terrible. It's really genuinely awful. In almost every conceivable way. And I wonder if I'm being unfair, considering the movie was made in, I believe, 1922. There were a few title cards saying that. This has been put together from several different prints of the film that have been discovered from when it was made in 22 to another print we found in the 30s, so yay. So I wonder if I'm just being unfair to really early film, but or maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention because had I not known the story of Dracula, I would have no earthly clue what was going on. Even knowing the story of Dracula, I may just be making stuff up based on what I know of the story and just kind of trying to force fill in the blanks. This movie is incompetently plotted and put together. Maybe I need to watch more silent films. I don't know why this one is so popular. It's terrible. Oh man, I don't want to be that harsh. I'm not talking about the multiple frame skips that are throughout the film. That's probably comes from a lot of damaged print, although a lot of it really does look like editing choices. You'll have a person walking from here to here, and they'll be doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, frame skip, doo-doo-doo-doo. And it seems like that was the director saying, we don't need 15 seconds of this person walking from point A to point B. Let's just cut a little bit out in the middle and improve the pacing. And I appreciate that. There's also some interesting things done with coloring. They actually, back in those days, you didn't have color film, of course, but what they found is that they could tint a particular color, and they use that in a really interesting way. For example, if the light is on in a room, it's tinted yellow, but when they blow out the candle, it switches to tinted blue. So you always, even though every single shot is shot in the broad daylight, the film language communicates what type of day it is. You don't have to wonder, is it night? Is it blue? Then it's night. It's still obviously the middle of the damn day, but cameras back then probably couldn't pull in enough light to shoot at night. So although there is one shot at the very end of the movie with really rich, deep blacks that look phenomenal. Maybe they blew their budget at that point on that particular shot, or maybe it was a mistake. I don't. There's also another scene that is way overexposed, and I'm like, oh, here's a part of the movie that just did not survive well. And then I thought, did they deliberately overexpose it to make it look like a spooky, mist-filled woods? Totally possible. I don't know. The movie, as terrible as a film, and it does not even remotely work as a film. Just from story, plotting, character, nothing makes any damn sense. It is... I found it worth a watch, just from a film history standpoint, and I found a lot of it really quite charming, especially the ridiculously over-the-top, really, really broad acting style of the early 20s, and some of the, you thought Zack Snyder did speed ramping too much? Oh boy, you should watch some of these movies. They overcrank the crap out, or no, that's undercrank the crap out of stuff. I have a bit on my ceiling that is messed up. Interesting. What the hell was I talking about? Oh, there's also some of the sets are great too, because there's a you look out the window and you see the houses across the street, and they are literally cardboard cutouts of houses outside the window. It's great. One thing I found interesting, I think we've all seen that classic image of the creepy shadow going up the stairs. And that is a great, Count Orlok's profile is great. That one shot of his shadow sliding up the stairs and then reaching out to the doorway with his long, spindly fingers, that is really, really great. The problem is Count Orlok himself looks really, really goofy. I mean, goofy. His eyes are always wide open and slightly crossed, and his teeth are like really long and thin. I mean, like someone took a chiclet, painted it white, cut it in half, and jammed it in his gums. He looks ridiculous. The character who becomes the Renfield type character for no particular reason, it makes no sense. He just is at one point. Is a lot creepier than Count Orlok. Orlok? Yeah, Orlok. The main lead, what's his name in the book? Jonathan Harker, I think. He's Hunter or Huffer or something in this one. The guy who goes to the Count's house, in this case, to sell him property. He, in the beginning of the movie, the actor is selling, "Oh, life is grand! I love life, and I have a beautiful wife, and everything is peaches and cream." It's that broad. This guy, this actor, if he were alive and at that age today, he should be playing the Joker in Suicide Squad. Jared Leto, or Leto, however you pronounce his name, off you go, buddy. This guy has a wide, manic, crazy eyes smile. He's more creepy than Count Orlok. I'm going to have to research. This movie would be perfect for riffing. I would be shocked if Mystery Science Theater 3000 or Netflix or Cinematic Titanic or CinemaSin, someone has not made fun of this, because it is ripe for... not just little continuity flubs, like the Renfield type character goes... he like catches a bug with his hand and then starts eating with his other hand. And it's like, what? There's a part in the front of the movie where the leads go into Dracula or Count Orlok's castle, and the coach, the person driving the coach, says, "No, it's because we won't take you any further because it's too dangerous, too spooky." And of course, you think to yourself, well, you knew where we were going. You could have mentioned that before we left. I would have hired someone else, you jerks. But, so the coach is going this way. Do. And they stop. And he's like, "What the hell, guys?" And they're like, "Oh, we ain't going any further than that. You're on your own, buddy." So he gets out and he starts walking that way. And the coach continues on. I'm like, "You're both going the wrong way!" That kind of stuff is not why I say this film does not work as a movie at all. It's really the plotting. There's a lot of stuff that just makes no damn sense. So the basic plot is our hero is tasked to go to Transylvania or wherever to sell the property right across the street from his house to Count Orlok, who is looking for a new place to live. So he travels on out there, and he leaves his wife with friends. So, I mean, the journey feels like it's an overnighter, maybe 2 nights at most, but they make such a big deal out of it, you're like, okay, I guess it's a fair journey, a week or so. So he goes, and he makes a stop at an inn. And he does the whole exposition thing. "I'm going to Count Orlok's!" And everyone goes... And the bartender or whoever he is comes up to him and says something like, "There's a werewolf out tonight." And it cuts to a hyena running around. I don't know if they couldn't get a wolf-looking dog, or if they thought that a hyena was just would make people go, "Well, that's the weirdest looking wolf I ever did see. That must be what a werewolf looks like. That's a hyena." And then, so the bartender comes over and is all serious, and I'm expecting the whole, "Let me tell you a story. 30 years ago, that kind of thing. But they just kind of laugh it off. And it's like, okay, that was pointless. So he goes to the castle, meets Count Orlok, And he reaches they're eating dinner, and there's this big chunk of bread, and he grabs the whole thing. I'm like, good Lord, man. The whole piece of bread. And he palms the whole thing, and he starts sawing from the other end. You know, he's cutting himself off a slice. I'm like, dude, table manners. Yo. And he cuts into his thumb, and then Count Orloff is, let me suck your thumb. He's like, no, that's gross. And he's like, well, could we stay up and talk? I'm lonely. And he seems real freaked out, and then it cuts again. And so Orloff is looking over the papers, sees if he wants to buy his house, and then he notices a picture of the guy's wife. And it's like, ooh, she has a lovely neck. And he's sufficiently creeped out by that, understandably so. There's no real difference between Count Orlok and full vampire Count Orlok. They didn't really try to make them different. He looks that goofball creepy the whole time. So goofball or the lead, right the next morning he has puncture marks on his neck, although they're this way, they're horizontal instead of this way, which means that the Count must have gone at him this way. I mean, most vampires, do the head tilt thing so they can get around the neck. He must have just kind of gone like that. So the next morning, he's like, oh, mosquito bites or something. He writes his girlfriend or wife, and there's just a guy riding by on a horse. And he's like, I don't know if that was the mailman or if it's just some guy on a horse. He's like, take this letter to this lady in this town that's like days or weeks away. If that was the mailman, how come he was just riding past the house? Maybe I didn't see where the mailbox was. Let's see. So Count Orloff, buys the house, and he is getting ready to go. And whatever his name is, our lead is all creeped out, and he's in bed. He's like, oh, there's no way to lock my door. I'm all creeped out now. And Orloff comes in, and he faints, and then Orloff goes out. He does kind of a shadow thing at him. There's a thing about don't let his shadow touch you. I'm touching you with my shadow. Sounds like children. Mom, Kelly's touching me with her shadow. So the next day, he and it's important to point out that he seems to have complete free run of this castle. He's wandering around the castle, and he finds Orloff's coffin and pops it open, and there's Orloff looking really goofy with his buck teeth sticking out. And he's horrified, and he runs up to his room and looks out, and it's night now. And Orloff is putting a bunch of coffins full of dirt on a flatbed being dragged by a bunch of horses, and then gets in one of them, and the lid magically puts itself on top, and off they go. And he's like, oh no, and he starts tying sheets together and crawling out the window. I'm like, did Count Orlok lock you in? Did you get Orlocked in? It's never established. I would hope he's just not that stupid, because he crawls out the window for no reason. And then he crawls down the thing and jumps off, and then he goes, ha, and faints. I think we're supposed to assume that it was a much larger drop than half of a foot, which is what it looked like. But he wakes up in the hospital later. And here's where things start getting weird. And where the film just starts making no sense. Count Orloff's coffins are floating down a raft on the river. I'm sure he made arrangements for this, to float his coffins full of dirt down a river on a really rickety-looking raft. And I thought, that takes balls. Because as a vampire, you are kind of at the mercy of fate when you're in your coffin, and I would have gone over land. Let's forget the whole can't cross running water thing. That doesn't seem to be an issue here. If that raft capsized or hit a rock and he slid off, he'd be a goner. I mean, wood floats, but it's a box full of dirt and human that I'm guessing is not airtight. So it's going to fill with water. It's going to sink. And then, Jonathan actually, someone, I guess, found him at the bottom of the castle and took him to a hospital. And then the coffins show up and are being loaded onto a ship, a schooner. And I'm thinking, our lead just took a horse and carriage all the way there. There was a horse-drawn flatbed with all the coffins on it. Why didn't that just go all the way to where he was going? Why did it go to a raft and then to a boat to boat across whatever ocean to get to the fictional town of whatever it's called? Why? So we cut to the docks, and the ship will sail tonight. And then the port authority comes over and says, hey, what are in all those boxes? And they look at the manifest, and it's just dirt for research purposes. So they open one of the caskets, and by golly, it's dirt. There were, I think, 5 or 6 caskets. Thank goodness they didn't open Orloff's. And then they dump the dirt out. Oh my gosh, there's my little cute itty bitty mice, but they're plague rats! And hit them with a shovel! They'll spread the plague! No! And then they apparently load the rest of them onto the boat. I guess it was just that box that we opened that was full of plague rats. I'm sure the rest of them are fine. At this point, or somewhere around this point, we find out that our hero's boss, who sent him to Count Orlok in the first place to sell him property, is now Renfield and is in a jail or asylum or something, and is eating bugs. 'Cause Count Orlok's influence? Although Renfield was a servant of Count Dracula, he did things. He facilitated, he was like Dracula's concierge. This guy doesn't do a damn thing. At all. Everyone who comes into his cell, all the time, the wardens and jail keepers, they keep turning their back to him. And the first guy does that, he picks a slip out of his pocket and it says, "Plague! There's a plague!" I'm like, great, from what? The rats are still all on the boat. And people are dying with weird neck wounds. It's like the Count Orloff is still on the boat. He's not here yet. How did that happen? Is this movie cut out of... Did this movie get reassembled out of order? Is that what happened? Might be. And then later in the movie, another guy comes in and turns his back, and I think Renfield jumps like 2 people this way because they keep turning their back on the crazy guy who's not tied down, who catches bugs with one hand and eats them with the other. So the ship finally arrives in Plague-tastic, and Orloff... I'm skipping a bit. So the ship is the captain, the first mate, and like 5 sailors. And 5 sailors are dead now. It's just us 2. And they dump the 5th sailor's body over there. And he's like, grabs a hatch and he's, "I'm going down in the hold. If I'm not back in 10 minutes. And he never completes that thought. He just goes down in the hold. He smacks the corner of one of the caskets, and plague rats come out. And he's ah! And then Count Orloff does the, rise up from his coffin thing, and he goes, "Drop my hatchet!" And he runs and he jumps overboard. And then the captain ties a rope around himself. I'm not sure if he's tying himself to the ship or to the steering wheel, or if he just felt like tying a rope around his midsection. Then the boat gets there, and Orloff grabs one of his coffins and walks to his new home. And they find the captain dead. And yeah, this movie is... this movie really needs to be riffed. It would, I think... with the right script and right performers, it would be hilarious. I mean, absolutely hilarious. It's certainly worth watching as a, not nostalgic, but a historical film curiosity. I'm glad I saw it. But it's not a good movie. in my ever so humble opinion. So, I guess since I told you the plot of the movie, I should, finish it, because we're almost done. Our hero found a book, How to Defeat Vampires, something like that, at the inn, and he's been reading through it all this throughout the movie. Well, his wife finds the book, and it says, the way to beat the vampire is for a maiden pure of heart to distract him, and so that he's out after the sun comes up. So she does. And Orlok is like, sucking on her neck. The correct way this time, at angle to each other. And, cock-a-doodle-doo, and he's like, oh, crap! And he dies, and the girl dies. But before that, I think she knew she was luring the vampire over, and she's, go get this guy! And I have no idea who that was. Maybe it's Van Helsing. There are a couple characters in this movie that just pop up. I'm going to teach you about the Venus flytrap. And then they're never heard from again. Either that or they are, and I just didn't recognize them. Really sloppy movie. So I don't know what time of night it is. I'm guessing it's right before the sun comes up. So he goes and gets this guy and comes back, and, the wife had already, tricked the vampire into staying out past his, bedtime, and he burns up in the sun, and she dies, and the guy is all, and the whoever the hell they grabbed, probably a doctor maybe, just kind of stands there. He's like, I had nothing to do. Renfield, he escapes because the warden and jail peoples do not pay attention. It just goes running around, and there's a title card that says people are pissed off about the plague, so they want to sacrifice, and Renfield is, his name is Knock, and Knock is it. What? And then there's kind of a chase scene where people chase him around the town, and he, puts up a scarecrow of himself, and there he is! Oh, it's a scarecrow! Darn it! It's the weirdest thing. And then he ends up back in jail, because he seems to have just walked there. Maybe I'm forgetting. But he ends up back in jail, and he's like, the master has died. Because the master just burned up in the sun. And, yeah. They made a movie about the production of this film. I think Max Schreck, the guy who, or however you pronounce his name, who played Count Orlok, was played by William Dafoe, maybe? There will be a subtitle here if I'm wrong about that. I forget what the name of the movie is. I'll probably find it and put that right here. But I'd be interested in checking that out. I don't know if it's on Netflix, but so maybe we have, what are we on, day 3? So 27 more days of Netflix left. Maybe that will be one of the show's movies, whatever I watch. What will I watch tomorrow? I know. You don't. But you will in a moment. See you tomorrow.